The heart. Flip notes part 1. So your heart mainly serves to move the blood around the body, and the blood carries nutrients, oxygen, etc. to all the cells in the body and removes waste products from the cells so they can be filtered out by the kidney. Functions of the heart. Main job, again, keep the blood pressure up. Blood pressure is adequate, then you can feed the cells. Routing blood. Well, yeah, it moves blood, poorly oxygenated blood to the lungs and highly oxygenated blood to the body. One-way blood flow. It has valves, so the blood goes one way in a healthy heart. It regulates blood supply. You need more, the heart pumps harder and sends more blood to the tissues. So, exterior structures of the heart. From the outside, you can see the coronary arteries, which feed the heart. The heart feeds itself first. Coming off the aorta, immediately arteries shoot out of there that feed the heart. You have your anterior coronary arteries, which you can see here. Your right ventricle is on the patient's right side. The right atrium is the little flap of tissue which receives a little bit of blood and pumps a little bit back into the ventricle, but mainly it has some stretch receptors in there for detection of things like high blood pressure. It can tell the body to get rid of more sodium, so blood pressure will go down if it's too high. It also has a pacemaker in there. So from the outside, you can see a bunch of the exterior features here. So the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, which you can barely see below, are the two big cave-like veins, vena, that bring blood back to the heart. Superior from above, inferior from below. And the aortic arch is that big, thick, arch-like structure coming out of the heart. That is where the heart pumps the blood out, and it's under very high pressure. It's one tube going out, so it's under pretty much twice the pressure, or more than twice the pressure the vena cava are, because it's one tube going out of the heart. But immediately branches off. You can see up there that takes arteries that go to the head and the arms, and then it curves down and drops down below, goes through the diaphragm to become the descending aorta. Coronary arteries. Remember, arteries go away, AA, and veins have valves. Because under lower pressure, veins come into the atria. So arteries go away from the heart, veins come to the heart. So the coronary arteries themselves nourish the heart. And the heart needs constant nourishment because it beats nonstop until you die. So the coronary artery feeds the heart. It feeds the muscle. The heart is mainly a muscle. It's cardiac muscle. So that myocardium, or muscle, heart muscle, myomuscle, heart, cardium, heart, it feeds it. Coronary vein takes the old blood from the myocardium. You notice the colors I used. Coronary artery is a bright red, meaning highly oxygenated blood. And the coronary vein, it's a darker red, which is the actual color of venous return blood in the veins. It is not blue like some people think. So the heart is located within the thoracic cavity in the mediastinum. You've already learned this by this point, but it's good to bring it back up again now. So it is in the middle, but slightly off place to the left side. This is a nice little, very simplistic diagram for basic heart anatomy. It's nice to know, helps you understand the route of blood into and out of the heart. So the aorta, again, is the main artery out of the heart. It branches off, as you can see up top, to your brachial arteries and your carotid artery. It goes down below, and it's not labeled down below, but the one shooting out the bottom that's not labeled is your descending aorta, and descends and carries blood to everything below the heart. Superior vena cava brings blood from above the heart. The right atrium, the first place blood comes into from the vena cava. It goes through the right atrium, through the tricuspid valve. There's three cusps to this valve, which allows blood to go down to the ventricle but not backwards. And then you got your right ventricle on the patient's right side. Look at the bottom of the right ventricle. It's kind of got a V shape to it, or a U shape, but a V. We'll say V. Helps remember ventricle. And below that, you have the inferior vena cava. Your inferior vena cava brings in blood from below the heart, from your legs, your abdomen, So all the blood returning to the heart comes in from the inferior vena cava. They both meet in the right atrium and dump blood into the right atrium to the right ventricle. Then from there, it all goes to the lungs. So it gets reoxygenated. From the lungs, it comes back to the heart on the patient's left side. Okay, so the right pulmonary artery, remember, arteries go away. This is a low oxygenated artery because it's going from the heart to the lungs. So it's bringing blood to the lungs to get oxygenated. From the lungs, it then comes through the left pulmonary artery, bring it back. Oh, that goes the left lungs. So the right and left pulmonary arteries take them to the right and left lungs. Your left pulmonary veins bring back the most highly oxygenated blood there is in the body, because once it gets to the heart and comes out the coronary artery, once it leaves the heart, cells start to use the oxygen. From the left pulmonary veins, we go into the left atrium, which is not labeled. From the left atrium, it goes through the left atrium, through the bicuspid or mitral valve. It has two cusps, and that goes down to the left ventricle. The left ventricle, as you can see here in this drawing, actually, it is a little bit thicker myocardium or muscle. So it's a stronger part because now this doesn't have to pump just the little lungs right on either side. It has to pump to the whole body. So it's the stronger side of the heart. And the interventricular septum is the same muscular wall shared by both the left and right ventricle. So it's in between the ventricles, hence the name interventricular. And a septum, kind of like that place that separates your left and right nasal passage, your nostrils, that's called your nasal septum. All right, a little more labeling again. Right pulmonary artery comes out to the right lungs. Right pulmonary veins brings highly oxygenated blood back from the right lungs into the heart. And those actually dump over in the left atrium. Interventricular septum. Your descending aorta takes out the highly oxygenated blood now down to the lower part of the body. And your semilunar valves, you'll find those in both places leaving the heart. You'll find them, those are your pulmonary semilunar valves we're looking at here because they're in the pulmonic system. They're going out to the lungs. Below that, right below that, that next set of valves underneath that would be your aortic semilunar valves because they go out to the aorta to keep blood from flowing back from the aorta into the heart. A bicuspid valve, like I said earlier, is called the mitral valve because it resembles a bishop's mitre. You can see the two cusps on the top of that bishop's head. So the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve contains two flaps, and those long stringy things which keep the flaps from prolapsing are called chordae tendineae. We'll show those later. Fun picture of a pacemaker inside of a heart in a cadaver. This little cartoon shows as the ventricles relax, they're filling with blood. Notice the blood comes right through the vena cava, right through the atria. The atria really don't do a whole lot. They pump a little bit at the end, and all that does is gives a little bit of overfill in the ventricles, but mainly ventricles fill when they're relaxing. Again, more labels, good practice. You can see the flow of blood through the pulmonary trunk, through the right and left pulmonary arteries, to the lungs, back through the pulmonary veins, into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, out through the aortic semilunar valve, up to the aorta, and out to the body. So you can label those A, superior vena cava, B, right atrium, C, inferior vena cava, D, your pulmonary trunk, which goes to your left and right pulmonary arteries, E would be your left atrium, F, the left ventricle, and G, the right ventricle. Okay, it wasn't labeled. A, of course, is your aortic arch or aorta. B is your tricuspid valve. Tri is on the right side, T-R-I, R-I-T. Kind of mix those around, tri-right. Helps you remember tricuspid on the right side of the heart. Right ventricle, your pulmonary veins. Now, since these are dumping, well, they're both dumping into the left atrium. These are dumping from the left side, so these would be the left pulmonary veins, but right now, just pulmonary veins. E is your bicuspid or mitral valve. Know the path of blood through the heart. This is a nice diagram which shows it very well for you. You can pause this and look at it. Another nice diagram to pause and practice. And another diagram to pause and practice. So blood goes through the lower part of the body. There are three tubes which traverse the diaphragm. And you can see this view from a transverse section through the body, which shows the descending aorta taking blood down below the diaphragm, the inferior vena cava bringing blood back up, and right there in the middle is the esophagus. It's the tube that takes food from your pie hole, from your mouth, down to the stomach. Those are the only three tubes that go through the diaphragm. They're good to know. They're bright colored here too. Your heart basically is slightly larger than your fist. So make a fist, that's roughly the size of your heart. If you're athletic, probably a little bit bigger. Chordae tendineae, love these things. When you look at them in the heart, when you dissect them, you'll find out how tough these are. They're like parachute cords. The valves are more like parachutes. So the valves, blood goes through, but when it comes back, it gets caught in these little parachute valves, and they fluff out and hold the blood, and they come together because they're very thin. But the chordae tendineae hold them tight down there so they don't prolapse or go backwards. It's really cool. And those things last many, many, many years. Like some people live to be 100 years, and those things keep lasting. It's awesome. There's the chordae tendineae. So the big one you can see there, I see two cusps. So what we're looking at there would be the bicuspid or mitral valve on the left ventricle. And of course, that's a very thick, you can see the thick muscle there. You can see the valves in there, and you can see the chordae tendineae. There it is again. There's a dissection lab you'll be doing. The tricuspid valve and chordae tendineae in action. Click on this picture, go to my PowerPoint website, download this. It shows a cartoon animation of how the semilunar valves, these little half-looking moon objects, go. Click on that, look at it. Here's the website. You can cut and copy that if you want. Blood path, basically from the heart, goes to arteries. The aorta to arteries to arterioles, smaller arteries. Finally, to the very thin-walled capillaries where oxygen and gases can diffuse out, where the fluid from the blood can flow out to become interstitial fluid and nourish the cells. And then coming back to venules, tiny veins up to veins, up to the superior and inferior vena cava into the heart. Again, here's some nice links to watch and practice. We're going to do the cardio lab in class. And again, you can go to my PowerPoint notes, click on this picture, and it'll help you understand the lub-dub sounds. Basically, when the valves close, the big valves you can see down below, the bicuspid and tricuspid, also called the AV, atrioventricular valves, they keep blood from flowing back to the atria. So when the ventricles beat, the ventricles are the strongest things. Whoomp, they beat. Those big valves, the AV valves, that is your bicuspid and tricuspid valves, they slam shut, and that makes the lup sound. Lup. The little tiny dup sound is when the ventricles relax and they're filling up with blood. The blood tries to come backwards from the aorta and from the semilunar or from the pulmonary arteries. And those little tiny semilunar valves up top, these little guys here, shut and make a quick little dup sound. So lub dup is made by the valves closing. So what's a murmur then? A murmur is when you get a valve which leaks slightly. So it's a lub sh. You hear a little lub sh. There's a leaky AV valve after lub. If it's a dup sh, then it's a leaky semilunar valve. So after the sound, if you hear a sound afterwards, that's a murmur. It means the heart valve's leaking some blood back in. It makes a little swishing sound. A stenosis is a stiff. Stenosis, stiff. Stiff valve has a hard time shutting. It's probably got some plaques on it, so the valve doesn't shut cleanly. And because so, you hear the sound ahead of the heart sound. It's like a schlup, dup, schlup. So it's having a hard time shutting, so you're going to hear a swishing sound ahead. And again, go to the cardioactive lab here and do some practice. The pericardium, as we talked about first semester, is the serous membrane surrounding the heart, and that allows the heart to beat nonstop without a lot of friction because it makes a frictionless environment. It protects the heart. Thus we end Part 1.